Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 9 articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express, especially from the perspective of the upcoming mains examination. In the first article, we'll talk about the challenges with respect to India's cybersecurity architecture and the way forward. In the second article, we'll talk about the importance, issues, and the way forward with respect to the MSMEs of India. In the third article, we'll talk about the very important scheme, that is Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation 2.0. In the fourth article, we'll have a discussion with respect to the Waqf Properties. In the fifth article, we'll have a discussion with respect to the scheme Faster Adoption and Manufacturing of Electric and Hybrid Vehicles 2.0. Finally, in the Prelims Snippet section, we'll have a discussion with respect to some of the very important topics for the preliminary exam. Now, coming to the very first article, it is about the India's cybersecurity challenges. So what has happened is that we have got the Indian Railways Catering and Tourism Corporation. Now, this has addressed a critical vulnerability on its insurance portal. Now, what used to happen before was that there was unauthorized access to the passenger's detail, right? And this was obviously in breach of the privacy rights of that particular individual and also a grave threat to the national security. But now this problem has been resolved. But what we see, this highlights that why cybersecurity remains a very important topic when we talk about the overall digital architecture in India, right? Now, this is a part of GS3 security challenges and cybersecurity. Now, we all know that India is having a rapid pace of digitization, and this is across various sectors. Take it education, retail, sort of finance, banking, investments, everywhere. What we see is that there has been a rapid pace of digitization, and along with this rapid pace of digitization, what we see is that it has been accompanied by more and more cybersecurity threats. Cybersecurity threats in the form of cyber warfare, in the form of espionage, in the form of phishing activities, in the form of malware, right? So there is the need of enhancing or making the overall cybersecurity architecture very robust. Now, what is a cybersecurity architecture? See, cybersecurity means the technologies, processes, or controls which are actually designed to protect the systems, networks, programs, and devices and data from cyber attacks. So we have got different types of cyber attacks. So in order to protect the whole system, the whole architecture, we have got these cybersecurity measures in place. Now, see, there can be various sources of threats. For example, there can be the nation states. So we have got, there has been an allegation that some of the entities, some of the agencies in China, they have perpetrated cyber attacks on India's very important government entities, right? Then there can be the corporate spies, right? We also know that there is a sort of a word which is known as the insider trading. So obviously the information is leaked and it is through the phishing activities. Then we have got the malicious insiders. Then we have got the hack activists. Then we have got the terrorist groups. Now, obviously, this compromises the sovereignty of the country, right? Then we have got the independent or individual hackers. Then we have got the criminal groups. Now, all these people combined, they form the source of cybersecurity threats. Now, why cybersecurity becomes important for India? Now, this becomes important for India because, see, India has a very large and ever-growing population of the internet users. So according to our data, almost 52% of the population of India, that is around 759 million, that used the internet once in a month in the year 2022, right? Next, what we see is that the data says that India is the second largest online market after China, right? So therefore, it becomes really important that in order to secure this online market, we have a robust cybersecurity architecture. Next, what the data says is that almost 1 billion people, now this number would rise to, this 759 million people, they would rise to almost 1 billion by the year 2027. Next is rapidly expanding the digital economy. See, as I just said in the beginning, that this rapid pace of digitization, it's there almost in every sector, be it education, be it retail, be it sort of finance, be it the banking services, everywhere you find some form of the other, the online platforms are coming up, they're propping up, and more online services are being provided to the people, right? So that is where we have got the varied sectors which are coming on the online platform. Next, we have got the government's target. See, we all know that the government has a target that by the year 2027-28, the government wants that the digital economy of India should cross $1 trillion. right? So that is the government's target itself. Next is there is a dominance of service sector in the overall GDP. See, we all know that almost 55% of the gross value added, it comes from the services sector. And in this particular service sector, we have the dominance of the software exports. We have the business process outsourcing. We have the knowledge process outsourcing. So therefore, it becomes indispensable to have a very sort of strengthened cybersecurity architecture in place. Now, what are the different challenges which the Indian cyberspace has? First is the critical infrastructure vulnerability. See, we have got some of the infrastructure which we deem as critical infrastructure. That is, if there is an attack on such infrastructure, then it would have debilitating consequences on the overall national security and economy, right? For example, let's say the power systems. Let's say the transportation. Let's just imagine the Indian Railways transportation network, right? So all these things, the strategic sort of public sector enterprises, all these things come into the critical infrastructure. Now, whenever you have a cyber attack, which is actually perpetrated on such entities, it leads to the disruption of essential services and it endangers the national security. The prime example of this is the 2019 alleged attack on the Kundankulam nuclear power plant. Now, this actually had a very serious impact on the working of the nuclear power plant. Next is the 2020 attack on the Maharashtra State Electricity Board. Now, in this particular attack, what we saw was that it was alleged that some of the Chinese entities were involved in perpetrating this particular act, and it led to power outage in the Mumbai, right? Now, we all know that Mumbai is the financial capital of the country. So therefore, it becomes very important to secure such networks. Next is the financial sector threats. See, please understand that we have got a lot of banks, we have got a lot of financial institutions which are onboarded on the sort of online platforms. Now, when you have got such type of entities on the online platforms, it obviously increases the risk. How? That we have got certain entities which actually steal the information, or which extort the money from such entities, either through phishing or ransomware attacks or malware attacks. Therefore, it leads to the financial losses. It also leads to the identity thefts. There have been cases where the personal identifiable information, as we are just witnessing in this particular article, that the personal information of people have been compromised, right? Then it also results in the loss of trust in the financial system. See, if we have a financial system which is again and again being attacked by cyber sort of warfare or cyber attacks, then it is something which is of a very serious concern, and it gives a very bad name to the overall economic architecture of the country, right? The prime example is the City Union Bank's SWIFT system. So we all know that we have got the SWIFT, that is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. Now, this is a messaging platform between different countries of the world so that they can have got the transactions. So there was a recent attack on the City Union Bank SWIFT system, and it resulted into the loss of millions of dollars, right? Next is data breaches and privacy concerns. See, we all know that more and more amount of data is being sort of carried on the online platforms. For example, let's take, we have got the digital locker, right? Or we have got the other schemes by the government where a lot of personal data of individual that has been onboarded to the digital platforms, be it the personal accounts of the users, or be it the government, or be it the businesses. So we have got almost every entity, different entities having the information with respect to the individuals online, right? Now, that obviously becomes a serious risk. Because once you have got such type of hackers, they can use and then sell your information for money, for the sake of earning sort of illicit money, right? So we have a cybersecurity agency in the US, that is Resecurity. It has said that there was the availability of the India's Aadhaar data of almost 55% of the country's population. So we had the data which was being sold on the dark web, and it amounted to almost the data of individuals amounting to almost 81 crores. So we had the data of 81 crore individuals, Aadhaar information, that is personal name, address, and everything, including the details with respect to their passports, right? Now, this was being sold on the dark web, and that too for a meager amount of money, right? So this is a very grave security concern. Next is we have it obviously leads to serious consequences on the privacy of that particular individual and the security of the nation as a whole, right? Also, we have one of the other cases where the personal identifiable information of almost 2 lakh candidates who appeared for the common admission test in order to get admission in some of the very good B schools of the country, their data, their name, their information was compromised, and that whole information was available on the internet, right? Now, these are very serious concerns. Next is cyber espionage. Now, this basically means that once you have got certain entities which deliberately try to creep into the system so that they can get some information, or who try to sabotage that particular architecture. Now, we have got non-state actors, we have got enemy countries which obviously try to do this, right? And they try to get the as much as information from the strategic or from the very important sectors in the country, right? So it also affects the national security, it affects the foreign policy, and obviously the economic development. So we have one of the cases of Operation Side Copy. Now, this was a Pakistani threat. There was a Pakistani group which was involved in getting information from some of the very strategic sectors in India, some of the very strategic public sector enterprises, and also information from the armed forces, right? So you can just see that we have got some of the very important examples which highlight that there has been recurrent sort of cyber attacks on different entities in India. Next is there is the case of advanced persistent threats. What do we mean by APTs? Advanced persistent threats. See, these are some of the very complex sort of hackers, and this hacking methodology, it requires quite good skills, right? So what happens is that such type of people, what they do is that they slowly get into the system of the person who is being targeted, and then they try to hide in that particular system, and for a long time, for a long duration, they try to get as much as information which is needed, and that obviously it leads to the infiltration into that particular system, and they remain hidden, and it leads to the compromise of the information, very critical information. So we have a Red Eco group that has told that there were some Chinese hackers who were involved in getting this particular sort of information from the very strategic critical information infrastructure sectors in the country, right? So there is where the problem lies, right? Next is supply chain vulnerabilities. See, we have got different services, we have got different products. Now, for these products and services, we have got a proper software or hardware component in place. If there is any vulnerability with respect to such architecture, then obviously it leads to compromise, and therefore it compromises the whole system and the services which are also provided. For example, we had the attack on the SolarWinds. Now, SolarWinds is a US software company, and it provides network management tools. Some of the sort of buyers of its services include the National Information Center of India. Also, we have got BHEL, right? Bharat Heavy Electronics Limited. So such entities are the software of SolarWinds. Now, there was a very serious attack on the SolarWinds, and it also compromised the information of NIC and BHEL, right? So what we see is that, the whole cybersecurity framework is well integrated. It's global in nature. If there is an attack on a particular entity, it obviously has repercussions to different entities around the world, right? Now, what have been the initiatives? Now, before we discuss the initiative, you can just look at the graph that since 2017, and especially during the period, the COVID period, that is this period, just look at this period, there has been a rapid increase in the attacks, and mostly the allegations have been that they have been perpetrated by the Chinese entities, right? So what have been the initiatives from the government? The first is the National Cybersecurity Policy. Now, this was released in the year 2013, and it primarily focused on 3 things. First, to protect the information and the information architecture. Second, to make the systems resilient when it comes to the attacks from such entities. Third, to make sure that we have got the national security maintained in place when it comes to the digital domain, right? Next, we have got the Cyber Surakshit Bharat initiative. Now, this basically, it focuses upon making sure that we have got information officers. We have got information officers in different departments, right? We have got the IT officers, so as to make sure that these officers are well acquainted of different skills which are needed to manage this cybersecurity framework, right? Next is the I4C. So we have got the Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center. Now, this is a part of the Ministry of Home Affairs. Please understand, this can be very important for the prelims, so do pay attention on this. Now, this is basically a mechanism to facilitate the information among the different law enforcement agencies of the country. right? So we have got different law enforcement agencies. Now, whenever you have got a particular information with respect to a cyber crime, then that is basically facilitated through the I4C system, and it makes sure that different sort of agencies in India, they have got proper coordination and sort of collaboration among them. Next is Cybersecurity Kendra. Now, this basically focuses upon the botnet cleaning. What do you mean by botnet? See, botnet is basically a system, a group of computers, a network of computers that is primarily hijacked and that is used for other purposes. That is used for ransomware, that is used for malware activities, right? So in order to make sure that such botnets don't exist, or there is a proper shield architecture which is there in place in order to protect the system, we have got the Cybersecurity Kendra. Next is the CERT-In. So we have got the Computer Emergency Response Team India. Now this is a part of Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, right? So basically this focuses upon analyzing a particular data, making sure that that particular data with respect to a particular cybercrime that has been disseminated to different entities, and making sure that it gives alert to different entities, right? And on the basis of alert, different entities then chart their future path. Next is the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center. So as I just said in the beginning, that we have got some of the very critical infrastructures, right? For example, power systems, for example, transportation, banking, investments. Now, these systems are actually looked after, the critical information infrastructure, it is looked after by a particular entity. Now, this is a part of the NTRO. Please understand, very important. It is a part of National Technical Research Organization. Now, can you just tell me that the NTRO works under which of the departments? Do write in the comment section. So this is a part of the NTRO, and that was actually established under the section 70A of the Information Technology Act. So do remember, right? Next is the Defense Cyber Agency. Now this is a collaborative effort of the three armed forces of the country to make sure that the critical information which is there with the armed forces, that is protected against malicious cyber attacks, right? So this is what you need to know about different initiatives. Now, what should be the way forward? That is very important. See, what we see is that there have been a lot of policies. See, India has a lot of policies. We have got the Information Technology Act. We have got the, for example, the cybersecurity policy in place. Then we have got the I4C. So we have got different instruments. But the issue is that there has been a consistent issue. There has been a consistent problem. And as you just saw in the graph, that there has been a consistent rise in the number of cyber attacks. It means there are some loopholes, right? So the first thing is that there is a critical shortage of technical staff. There is a shortage of cyber forensic facilities, cybersecurity standards, and coordination issues among different entities. So we need to make sure that we have got adequate technically skilled staff with us. We have to make sure that the cyber forensics are well maintained in their place, right? We need to make sure that there are proper skilling platforms, there are proper technical guidance initiatives in the domain of cybersecurity, so that we can have enhanced cybersecurity framework. Next is, we need to develop Cybersecurity Center for Excellences. So there needs to be, for example, we have got some of the very good technical institutes around the country. For example, we have got the IITs. So in some of the IITs, we can establish the Center for Excellences. And those entities can then focus upon making sure that they have got foolproof cybersecurity architecture. Then we also need to adapt the best practices from around the world, right? Learnings can be taken from different countries. For example, we have got some of the very, India has partnerships with different countries, for example, US or Japan. So learnings can be made from there. Next is that there is a need to have a cyber security board. Very important. What it would do is that it would have the authority to convene a meeting if you see that there has been a very serious cyber attack which has happened. So it should have the authority to convene and to chart the future progress, to just decide that what should be the future course of action. Because right now what happens is that the response is very late, right? And that obviously compromises the whole information and also the systems. So what we can also have is zero trust architecture. Now, what do we mean by zero trust architecture? See, in traditional network, in traditional computing, what happens is that we have got a proper network, right? So the insiders, they are trusted completely. The outsiders have to actually prove their identity, do an identity check, validate whether their identity is matching or not, right, with these standards or not. But the internal people, they have full access to this, to the network. And that obviously in many times have compromised the information. So in zero trust architecture, what happens is that nobody is trusted. Nobody in the system is trusted, and at every stage the person has to validate the information. So there is a validation of the information with respect to the identity of the person, whether internal or external, so that the integrity of the system can be maintained. So what we are witnessing is that there has been a demand that different sort of the architecture, the cybersecurity architecture, whether it's about the government, whether it's about the businesses, that should be made on the zero trust architecture. Next is strengthening the existing legal frameworks. Very important. See, we have got the Information Technology Act, and we all know that this has been amended so many times. There have been guidelines, information sort of guidelines which have been sort of given by the government. So what we see is that the pace of technological development has been always faster than the regulatory setup. So what we need is a comprehensive law, right? We need a comprehensive law which does not only have the short sight view of rectifying that particular cyber attack which has been perpetrated, but also it has a long-term vision. It has to make sure that the systems are robust and systems are well maintained, right? So all aspects of cyber security should be addressed by that particular comprehensive law. Next is that there needs to be an enhanced sort of international cooperations. Very important. So see, as I said in the beginning, that these cyber attacks, they have been, in many of the cases, they have been perpetrated from across the border, that too by enemy entities. So there has to be a proper sort of collaboration among different countries, different regional organizations. For example, we have got BRICS, we have got the sort of the SCO. They can unite and they can come up with a proper framework, right? Also, the help can be taken. The importance here lies of the UN, United Nations, or the International Telecommunications Union, or the International Police Organization, that is Interpol. So we can use such sort of platforms in order to make sure that these cybersecurity incidents don't affect the critical information infrastructure. Now, before I go to the next point, can you just tell me that which is the National Center Bureau which actually coordinates with the Interpol, which is India's National Center Bureau which coordinates with the Interpol? Let me see who answers first in the comment section. Now, next, as I said, that we can also have regional or bilateral dialogues. For example, that we have got India-US. You must be aware that recently we have the ICIT, that is Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, right? So such platform should be there. We also have got cybersecurity initiatives between India and US, between India and Japan. So such collaborative mechanisms should be enhanced. It needs to be made sure that yes, we can sort of have a more discussions on such issues so that these threats and incidences of cybersecurity, they don't repeat, right? So what we see is that again, that the digitization has been happening, and it is happening with a rapid pace. Different sectors are being covered, and it is being accompanied by a lot of cybersecurity threats. Therefore, it becomes important that we have got proper policies in place, and this should be the way forward so that we can have a system which is safe, which is secure, and which protects the privacy of the individual and at the same time the national security. Now, before we go to the next topic, we have got a mains previous year's question. So the question says, what are the different elements of cybersecurity? Keeping in view the challenges in the cybersecurity, examine the extent to which India has successfully developed a comprehensive national cybersecurity strategy. Now, this is from the year 2022. There is also a practice question. So the question says, the cybersecurity architecture in India suffers from various vulnerabilities and threats. Elaborate upon the need of strengthening the government's effort to realize the vision of safe and secure cyberspace. So do write a particular answer on this. Now, the next topic is with respect to the MSMEs of India, that is micro, small and medium enterprises. Now, recently the Supreme Court has observed that the banks should have got proper information systems in place so that they can assess the MSME stress before their accounts turn into the non-performing assets. So we all know that MSMEs in India, they suffer from adequate credit, right? And because of that, sometimes what happens is that their accounts turn into the non-performing assets. So this is a very crucial issue, and we'll see why MSMEs are important, what are the issues they're suffering from, and what can be the way forward. Now, this is with respect to GS3, Indian economy and issues. Now, see, MSMEs are actually known as the lifeblood of the Indian economy. And why it is so? Because they play a very important role when it comes to the industrial development, when it comes to generating a lot of employment opportunities, when it comes to generating the entrepreneurship opportunities, right? It also leads to inclusive growth, right? So that is where it is known as the lifeblood of the Indian economy. Now, as I said, that it plays a very crucial role. In India, the MSMEs, they are actually classified by the Ministry of micro, small and medium enterprises on the basis of two factors. That is, first is the investment, and the second is the turnover. right? So do remember that. Do remember this. It can be important for your prelims, right? So how they're classified now, a particular enterprise would be counted as would be deemed as a micro enterprise if the investment in the plant and machinery, it is not more than 1 crore and the annual turnover is not more than 5 crores. It would be deemed as a small enterprise if the investment in plant and machinery is not more than 10 crores and the annual turnover is not more than 50 crores. It would be deemed as a medium enterprise if the investment in plant and machinery or the equipment is not more than 50 crores and the annual turnover is not more than 250 crores. So have a general information with respect to that. Now, what is the importance of MSME in India in terms of the numbers? See, there are almost 7 crore MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises in the country, and they employ almost 12 crore people. 12 crore people, right? Next, the MSMEs of India, they contribute heavily to India's GDP. So according to the data by Confederation of Indian Industries, the MSMEs in India contribute to almost 30% of India's GDP, right? Now, this is very important once we talk about the inclusive and sustainable development, right? Next is the MSMEs, they are spread across the country. It's not like they're only in the urban parts and they're not present in the rural parts. Many of these MSMEs, they are based in the rural areas. Now, what happens is that if you have such MSMEs spread across the country, it obviously promotes inclusive growth. It makes sure that there is less rural to urban migration, right? Balanced regional development is achieved. Next is the MSMEs foster innovation. Now, when you have such MSMEs, they try to innovate on those products and services which make sure that their productivity increases, their efficiency increases, and it suits the local needs of that particular area, right? So that is where the importance of MSMEs come. Now, what are the challenges which are faced by the MSMEs in the country? First and foremost is the timely and affordable credit. That is what the basis of the article is all about. So, see, we have got the traditional lenders, right? So by traditional lenders, what we mean, let's say we have got banks or other financial institutions. They are not actually giving adequate credit to these MSMEs. Why? What is the reason? Because these traditional lenders, they actually perceive these MSMEs as risky borrowers. Why? Because these MSMEs, they lack credit history. They don't have adequate credit history. Moreover, they don't have adequate collateral, right, which is needed for the loan. So that is where the issue comes. Also, we have got the data where the RBI says that only 16% of the MSMEs were able to receive timely credit from traditional sources. Next is limited access to domestic and international market. Because of lack of resources, because of lack of capital, and because of the competition they face with the larger players, what happens is that they are not just the international market, obviously not, they're not even able to explore the domestic market, right? So over here, the market access becomes very crucial. This Confederation of Indian Industries data also says that market access acts as one of the very important barriers for these MSMEs. Next is keeping pace with the technological advancement. See, most of these MSMEs, as I said, that they lack capital, they don't have the adequate resources, so they use obsolete technologies, right? And that compromises the productivity and the efficiency of such enterprises. So what happens is, once you don't have, you're not as productive or as efficient as the other players in the market, obviously you'll be a laggard, right? So that is where the issue comes. So we also have a data from the MSME Development Institutes, which says that almost 42% of the MSMEs, they face difficulty in accessing these technologies. Next is complying with a multitude of complex regulations. See, please understand, the sad part in India is that we have got a lot of regulations which are to be followed, right? And those regulations for these MSMEs, it require a lot of their time. It requires a lot of their resources. They have to give a lot of their money or resources to such making sure that they are actually following these regulations. Now, this makes them to divert from their core business activity, from their main work, and this compromises their outcome. It compromises their productivity, right? This has also been said by the World Bank that these complex regulations, they act as a major hurdle when we talk about the expansion of MSMEs in India. Next is the lack of skilled manpower. Some of these MSMEs, they require some level of skills. Now, this skill set is not adequately available with the people. Also, we have got the National Skill Development Corporation's report, which says that there is a huge gap between the skills demanded from the industry and the skills which are available in the market, right? So these are some of the key issues which are plaguing the MSME sector. Next, what have been the government interventions to support the MSMEs in India? The first and foremost is the Credit Guarantee Fund Trust for Micro and Small Enterprises. Now, this is basically, this provides the guarantee to these traditional lenders, right? So we have got the traditional lenders, for example, the banks. So whenever you have got a particular MSME which takes loan from these traditional lenders, the Credit Guarantee Fund, it would provide a sort of guarantee to these traditional lenders so that these MSMEs can avail collateral free loans from these traditional lenders, right? And if you go by the data, what it says is that in the year 2022-23, this trust, it gave guarantee to almost 3.1 lakh crores of loans which were given by the traditional lenders, right, the banks. Next is we have got the Pradhan Mantri Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency, commonly known as PM Mudra. Now, it aims to provide the collateral-free loans up to the tune of 10 lakhs. Right. And since the inception of this scheme, it has provided loans up to the tune of more than 18 lakh crores. Right. A huge number. Next is Credit Guarantee Capital Subsidy Scheme. See, what happens is, as I said, that technology plays a very important role. If you have got adequate technological interventions, that could enhance your productivity and efficiency. Now, this particular scheme, that is Credit Guarantee Capital Subsidy Scheme, it focuses upon enhancing the technological systems in these MSMEs. Now, this provides a subsidy of around 15% in making sure that these MSMEs, they acquire proper technologies, right, so that they can enhance their outcome. Next is Pradhan Mantri Employment Generation Program. See, what it focuses upon is making sure that there are self-employment opportunities which are generated, right? And with the help of such self-employment opportunities, they can have proper livelihood options. So according to the scheme, more than 1 crore sort of self-employment opportunities have been created through this particular scheme. Entrepreneurship Skill Development Program. Now, this focuses upon equipping or training the entrepreneurs. Now, please understand that if you have got a particular entrepreneur, he or she would set up a business, and then obviously he or she would then sort of make sure that adequate employment opportunities are given to different people. Now, it not only increases the sort of potential or the earning capacity of this individual, but also it provides adequate livelihood options to the other individuals. So this program aims to make sure that different entrepreneurs in the country, they are given adequate training, they are equipped with adequate finances so that they can start their own businesses. Next is Udyam Portal, a very important. See, this portal aims to make sure that there is a proper registration of these MSMEs online. Now, once you have got the registration of these MSMEs, they can avail different benefits, right, which they were not able to avail before, right? Moreover, it facilitates a smooth transition, right? So it also makes sure that these complex regulations, they don't hinder the activities of these MSMEs. Next is the Trade Receivable E-Discounting System. Now, this is a system of the Reserve Bank of India. It's promoted by the Reserve Bank of India. What happens is, let's assume that we have got a particular MSME, right? Now, today is 5th of August, right? Let's say this particular MSME, it provided services to a different entity, that is entity A, right? Entity A was the buyer of the services from this MSME. Now, this entity A has promised to give the money for the services it has availed on 20th of August. Right. In the meantime, if this MSME requires some amount of money, that is working capital, then it can approach a particular trades platform. It can give the trade receivables, and then it can get some amount of money, that is the working capital. This is how this system works, that is the trade system. Now, this is very important in providing timely working capital to these MSMEs, right? So that is what the government interventions have been. Now, what can be the way forward? The first is the financial empowerment, very important. See, the International Financial Corporation, it's in study, it's said that there is almost a deficit of $1 trillion. $1 trillion with respect to the finances when we talk about the MSMEs in the emerging economies around the world. So there is a need to expand the credit guarantee schemes, as we just discussed, that such type of schemes, the Credit Guarantee Fund Trust, they should be expanded so that these MSMEs can avail collateral-free loans from the traditional lenders. Next is there needs to be an alternative financial instruments, for example, peer-to-peer lending, or we can have angel investors, or we can have viability gap funding, right? So such alternative mechanisms should also be explored. Next is fostering market access. Now, very important. In order to make sure that these MSMEs, they can sell their products and services to the people around the world, and even like that is domestically and even internationally. They need to be integrated with the e-commerce platforms. So if you have the integration of these MSMEs with the e-commerce platform, it would reduce their geographical limitations, right? And it would make sure that they also earn and make profit out of their business. Next is reserving a specific percentage in the government procurement. Very important. See, you all know that we have got the government e-marketplace, GM portal. Now, the GM portal, it has certain sort of reservation or certain component which is reserved for the MSMEs in order to procure from these particular MSMEs. So we need to have a specific percentage which is reserved in the procurement. Whenever you have got the government procurement, there has to be some sort of reservation, some sort of quota for these MSMEs. Next is bridging the skill gap. Very important. The government and the industry should come together. They should collaborate and make sure that adequate people with adequate skills are given employment opportunities in the sort of different MSMEs. Now, for that, proper targeted skill development programs are needed so that specific skill set is actually given to that particular individual. Also, there can be apprenticeship programs which focuses upon the practical learning and they don't focus upon the theoretical aspect. Next is simplifying the regulatory framework. Very important. As I said, in a country like India where you have to follow a lot of regulatory processes, it becomes important that there should be a reduction in the compliance burden on the MSMEs so that they can adequately focus upon their core business activities, right? Also, what we can do is that we can have a single window clearance. Now, this obviously, it would lessen the time frame for the different regulatory checks. It would make sure that these MSMEs have got adequate time with them so that they can perform their activities efficiently and productively. Next is encouraging innovation and technology adoption. Now, this is very important. See, as I said in the beginning, that we need to make sure that these MSMEs, they get rid of the obsolete technologies. Very important. So for that, we need to have schemes like the credit guarantee linked subsidy scheme, or we have got a scheme like scheme for upgradation of technology, so that it brings in efficiency in the overall setup. It makes sure that these MSMEs become more efficient, become more productive. And for that, we need to give adequate grants and tax benefits for the R&D, that is for the research and development. So what we see is that MSMEs are very important. They have played a very important role when we talk about the inclusive growth, sustainable development. So these issues should be rectified. It needs to be made sure that they have got adequate access to the capital, adequate access to the working capital, and adequate access to technology. And we also need to make sure that the compliance burden is reduced. So therefore, chart an economic path where these MSMEs also get the benefit out of it, and they also earn adequate livelihood, they also have adequate livelihood opportunities, and they also make profits out of their enterprises, right? So that we can have a more inclusive growth and development paradigm. Now, this is what you need to know about this particular topic. Now, before we go to the next topic, we have got a mains practice question. It says MSME sector is referred to as the lifeblood of the Indian economy. In the light of this statement, discuss the challenges, solutions pertaining to the MSME sectors in India. So do write a particular answer on this question. Now, the next article is with respect to the AMRUT 2.0, that is Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. So what we have observed is that the government is making this particular scheme as a priority scheme in the next 100 days agenda, right? It is making sure that there is a proper urban transformation which takes place, and that too with the help of this particular scheme. Therefore, this scheme becomes very important for the urban transformation, right? So it is a part of GS1, urbanization, and a part of GS2, that is welfare schemes. Now, what actually is this particular scheme, that is AMRUT scheme, that is Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. See, this particular scheme was launched in the year 2015, and it was actually aimed for selected cities, that is 500 cities, and it almost covered 60% of the urban population of the country. Urban population was covered. That is almost 60% of the urban population of the country was covered through this particular scheme. Now, this scheme actually focused upon enhancing the basic infrastructure for selected cities. Basic infrastructure means that there was the focus upon the water supply, there was the focus upon the sewage treatment plants, there was this focus upon the green spaces, there was the focus upon the non-motorized transportation, right? So these were the areas which were catered to by this particular scheme. Now, what we saw was that it definitely had some of the positive feedbacks. It did have positive outcomes. Therefore, the government actually came up with a new version of this particular scheme, that is the AMRUT 2.0. Now, this the previous scheme was actually subsumed in this scheme. Now this was launched in the year 2021. Now this was for a period of 5 years. That is till the year 2025-26. Now, the aim of this particular scheme is to make sure that there is a universal coverage of water supply. What do we mean by this? That see, AMRUT, the initial scheme, it focused upon 500 cities, but this particular scheme, the reinvigorated scheme, the new scheme, it is actually focusing upon covering all the 4,900 statutory towns. That is not just the 500 cities, but also the 4,900 statutory towns. Right. Next is that it is also focusing upon the sewerage management of making sure that these earlier 500 cities which were covered by the AMRUT scheme, they have got proper sewage management in place, right? So these are the two objectives. Next, it also aims to promote the circular economy of water. That is, it is trying to focus upon making sure that there is circular usage of water, and it is being done with the help of City Water Balance Plan. Now, what are these plans all about? See, what happens is that these plans focus upon making sure that there is proper recycling and reuse of water. There is proper recycling of the grey water. It tries to make sure that there is proper water conservation. For example, let's say the water harvesting, right? So through these activities, it's focusing upon the circular economy of the water. Next, it also gives impetus to the reform agenda on the ease of living of citizens, by making sure that adequate attention is also paid on the urban finances. Adequate attention is also paid on making the master plans, right? Next, a Payjal Sarvekshan is also a part of this. Now, this tries to focus upon the equitable, actually evaluating the equitable distribution of water. That is, whether you have got equitable distribution of water or not. What is the water use efficiency by different cities around the country, right? So that is a proper survey. It's a proper survey. Next is technology submission for water. Now this also has a submission which is actually focusing upon the technological adoption. That is to make sure that we have got the technology in place so that it makes sure that there is proper water supply and the sewage treatment plants, right, in place. Next, it also focuses upon the information, education and communication campaigns. See, in such type of activities, it is very important that the community participates. If the community is not a part of such activities, obviously it is bound to sort of lag behind this particular scheme. So therefore, we have got particular IEC campaigns. Now, the fund allocation in this particular scheme, it's almost 3 lakh crores with a contribution from the center of 67,000 crores. Right. So this is a contribution which is made by the center, and the rest is coming from the states. Now, what are the general challenges with respect to this particular scheme? Right. See, we had this AMRUT scheme which was launched in the year 2015. But what we have seen is that still we have around 2 lakh people who die every year because of inadequate water, sanitation and hygiene facilities. Right. It means that there are loopholes in this particular scheme. Next is that the India's disease burden from the unsafe water, it is almost 40 times that of an average Chinese person, right? So even if we compare ourselves with the China in this aspect with respect to the water supply, with respect to water sanitation and hygiene, with respect to the sewage treatment plants, what we see is that the disease burden because of such type of contaminated waters, what we have is it's almost 40 times that of the Chinese. Next, the urban areas, the urban households in India, almost 31% of the urban households in India, they lack piped water still now, right? And almost 68% of these urban households in India, they lacked piped sewage system, right? So this is a point of concern, a very serious point of concern. Now, what are the challenges with respect to this particular implementation of this scheme? First is the project implementation. See, there have been cases where there has been a proper release of the funds, but that has not been adequately utilized because of the inefficient bureaucratic structure at the ground level. So we have got the states like Bihar or Assam where the money is not being utilized. And again, we have got, in this particular scheme, we have got the methods of the public-private partnerships. They are not being utilized. So that is a point of concern. Next is AMRUT program scope. As we said, saw in the beginning, that we are focusing upon particular projects, that is water supply or sewage treatment plants, or we are focusing upon, let's say, the green spaces. So we are having a project-centric outlook. We are not looking at the whole system, the whole urban landscape holistically. That is what the issue with this particular scheme is also. Then it also overlaps and it has convergence with other schemes. For example, let's say we have got Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. This also has focus upon the wash facilities, that is water, sanitation and hygiene, right? So once you have got overlap with the other scheme, it leads to implementation challenges. And obviously then there are funding challenges also, right? Then there are, in many cases, there are confrontation between different departments. Next is unaddressed air pollution. We have addressed the water aspect from this particular policy. That is, we are looking at the water supply, we are making sure that there is less water pollution. But what about the air pollution? So we had this National Clean Air Program, right? So in this National Clean Air Program, this was primarily meant for the air pollution aspect. But again, in the AMRUT 2.0, we have not focused upon the air pollution aspect. Next is non-inclusive governance structure. See, please understand that this policy, it's basically a top-down phenomena. The central government has been framing it, then the state governments are, directing the district administration, and then the district administration is implementing it. We don't have the community participation in it. So that is where there is a non-inclusion. The community is not made a part of it. And if the community is not made a part of it, obviously the scheme would suffer. Next is, what should be the way forward for this particular scheme? We need to focus upon the diversification of finances. As I just said, that we cannot solely rely on the central finances or the state finances. We need to actually look for other avenues. For example, let's say user fees. So the municipalities should actually collect the user fees, or property tax, or municipal bonds, or different sort of, let's say the public-private partnerships can be there, right? So there has to be an ownership, and for that ownership, what we need is that we need to have a diversification of the finances. Next is holistic and people-centric approach. As I said, that this particular program, it is having a project-centric approach. So first, it needs to be made holistic. Next, the people should be a part of this particular scheme. There needs to be a proper mechanism where the decision making is also vested with the people, where they also feel that they are a part of this particular scheme. Next is community engagement. Same thing, that the community needs to be engaged in the sort of implementation of this particular scheme. Next is learning from successful case studies. See, in India, there have been many examples where people have focused a lot upon the water conservation. So if you know that there are traditional methods of water conservation, for example, johads, right? So we have got parts in Rajasthan where people are still practicing such type of traditional water conservation practices. So learnings can be made from such areas, and then they can be incorporated. That particular idea can be incorporated in the project framing. Next is innovation and research. Very important. There has to be a proper research. There are, different institutes around the country. We have got the Indian Institute of Technologies, we have got the National Institutes of Technologies. They need to do a particular research on that, and then they need to come out with economical solutions, so that those solutions can be incorporated by different cities around the country. So what we see is, definitely this is a very good scheme. It has a lot of potential advantages, but what we need is that we need to have such things in place. We need to have a proper way forward, where we need to focus upon diversification of the finances. We need to focus upon the community engagement. We need to focus upon learning from the successful examples, and also the approach has to be holistic and people centric. So that is what you need to know about this particular scheme. Now, before we go to the next topic, we have a question. So the question says that AMRUT 2.0 aims to bring transformational changes in the urban landscape of the country. Highlight the challenges and the potential of this particular scheme. Discuss. So do write a particular answer on this question. Now, the next article is with respect to the Waqf Properties. So recently there's a news article which says that the government is trying to bring almost 40 amendments to the Waqf Act of 1995. Right. Now, there are some entities in the country, for example, the All India Muslim Personal Law Board, which have said that this is unacceptable. Now, it remains to be seen what happens. Now, this is a part of GS2 Constitution, features and statutory bodies. Now, please understand that we have the literal meaning of this word Waqf is actually detention or confinement, the literal meaning. But if you go into the analysis of this Waqf properties, what you would see is that how a particular property is declared as a Waqf property. So any movable or immovable property given in the name of God for religious and charitable purpose by a person professing Islam. Now, this is important. So if you have a person who is professing Islam, and if that particular person out of his his own will donates a particular movable or immovable asset to that particular entity which is actually managing such assets, then that would be known as a Waqf property. Now, those assets are actually known as Waqf, right? So we have got Waqf, and then it is transformed into a Waqf property. Now, please understand that these Waqf property, they are continuing entities. What do you mean by that? If a particular entity, if a particular asset is declared as a Waqf property, then nobody can change its ownership. That is, it would always remain as a Waqf property. Now, the whole system of this Waqf property, it is governed by the Waqf Act of 1995. Please understand that what is the status of Waqf properties in India? We have got, according to the data by the Waqf Management System of India, at present, there are almost 8.5 lakh properties. The important part is that after the army and the railways, most of the land is with the Waqf boards. Now, this plays its importance at the state level. Right, we'll see what this is all about. So, these properties are spread over more than 8 lakh acres of land, right? So you can imagine the quantum of lands which these Waqf basically have. Now, under this Waqf Act, we have initially we had the Waqf Act of 1954, and through this particular act, we had the constitution of the Central Waqf Council. Now, this is obviously a statutory body, and the Union Minister who is in charge of the Waqf is the ex-officio chairman of the council. Now, the work of the council is to advise the central government and the state governments and the state Waqf board on different aspects. And it was in the amendment of 1995 that some of the powers of the Central Waqf Council were also increased. Now, what is a Waqf board? See, we have these Waqf board for each state. So we have got, each state has a Waqf board. It is primarily the responsibility of these Waqf board to maintain such properties. Now, they have a particular chairman, and then we have got some of the nominees. We have got the nominees from the state governments, right? From the state governments, 1 or 2 nominees. Then we also have got Muslim legislators or parliamentarians who are a part of these Waqf board. We also have got some of the Muslim members of the bar council of that particular state who are also a part of these Waqf board. So it has a lot of a very diversified sort of membership. Now, the importance of Waqf board lies in the fact that they have the power to acquire or transfer any land which is declared as an Waqf, right? Which is a part of the Waqf property. So administering the property, the work is they administer the property and take measures for the recovery of the lost properties of any Waqf. Alienating the Waqf property without prior approval of the state Waqf board is an offense, right? So that is what you need to know about the Waqf property. That is a Waqf Act of 1995, the Waqf Central Waqf Council, and the Waqf board. The government is actually trying to bring some of the amendments by making sure that there is adequate women representation in the Waqf board of different states, and also there are other amendments also, right? It remains to be seen what happens. So that is what you need to know about the Waqf boards. So the next article is with respect to the FAME 2.0, that is faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles in India. Now, this is a particular scheme of Ministry of Heavy Industries, and it primarily aims to enhance the number of electric vehicles in India to make sure that there is a proper smooth transition to the electric vehicles. Now, again, there has been a call that we need to enhance the manufacturers of the electric vehicles have been saying that there is a need to enhance the subsidy under the FAME 2.0 for these electric vehicles, right? Now, we will see it is a part of GS2, Government Policies and Interventions, and GS3, Environment Conservation. See, what is this FAME scheme all about? Now, please understand that this particular scheme, it was launched in the year 2015 and it ran till the year 2019. Then we had this upgraded version which was started in the year 2019 onwards for a period of 5 years. Now, this scheme, it was launched under the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan. Now, this mission plan, it was launched in the year 2013 and it aimed to enhance the national fuel security of the country through promoting hybrid and electric vehicles in the country, right? So that is what the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan was all about. Now, this scheme, FAME, initial scheme, it offered upfront incentives on the purchase of these electric vehicles, right? And primarily, the focus areas were 4. That is technology development, demand creation, pilot projects, and charging infrastructure. Now, the duration of this scheme was from 2015 till the year 2019, and the funding was to the tune of 895 crores. Right, but then we had the other scheme, the upgraded version, that is FAME 2.0. As I said in the beginning, it's a part of the Ministry of Heavy Industries, and the budget was increased to a lot of extent. That is around 10,000 crores. Right. Now, this particular scheme, that is FAME 2.0, it has been focusing upon the commercial sector as well as making sure that there is adequate sort of incentives even for the private players, right? So we have got, it focuses upon supporting the electrification of public and shared transportation. Now, this is focusing upon, for example, let's say the increased usage of e-buses, increased usage of commercial e-3-wheelers, e-4-wheelers, passenger cars, and also the private two-wheelers, right? So that is where the domain, that is the focus of this particular scheme is all about. Now, also it focuses upon creating the charging infrastructure. Now, this is something which is very important, because if you don't have the adequate spaces, if you don't have the adequate charging points, then the whole project of the electric vehicle, it becomes useless, right? Now, we have a particular scheme. The data points with respect to this scheme are very normal, but we had very particular parliamentary committee which recommended few of the suggestions which should be implemented and which should be made a part of this FAME 2.0. So as we saw in the beginning, that the manufacturers are focusing upon the increase in the subsidy. They want an increase in the subsidy so that there is an increase in the uptake of these vehicles. The Parliamentary Standing Committee, it recommended few of the suggestions. First, it said that there needs to be the restoration of the subsidy for the electric two-wheelers. So in June 2023, there was a reduction in the subsidy amount for these two-wheelers. So the parliamentary committee has said that there needs to be a restoration. Next, what the parliamentary committee has said, that there needs to be also a focus upon the private four-wheelers. Now, this is actually focusing upon only the commercial four-wheelers, right? So there needs to be also some adequate subsidy for the private four-wheelers. Next, the parliamentary committee has recommended that there needs to be focus upon creating sort of particular clusters for manufacturing the battery components, for manufacturing the electric vehicle components. There needs to be adequate funding for that. Moreover, the committee has suggested that adequate funds should be given to entities like BHEL, Bharat Heavy Electronics Limited. Why? Because this BHEL, that is Bharat Heavy Electronics Limited, it provided the EPC, engineering, procurement and construction services for maintaining or for making a lot of charging infrastructure. Moreover, this committee has recommended, why I'm telling you about the recommendations is because that these recommendations can be used in your answers. What this committee has recommended is that women self-help groups can be utilized in order to make more number of charging stations, right? So that can be also a sort of an added advantage for both e-vehicles users and also for the women livelihood options. So that is what you need to keep in mind. So that is what you need to know about this particular scheme. Now, coming to the prelims snippet section, we have got the first topic as the corporate social responsibility. So if you define this particular thing, it is basically an initiative to assess and take responsibility for the company's impact on the environment and social welfare. See, whenever a company performs something, it definitely has an impact on the environment and also on the social aspects. So in order to compensate for that, the companies are mandated under the Companies Act of 2013, that is under the clause 135, that they need to spend an adequate amount on these activities, that is the corporate social responsibility, which has to be taken up by these entities. Now, India is the first country, do remember this, in the world to mandate the corporate social responsibility. The amount of funds which are to be diverted to these activities, it is around 2% of their average net profit in the previous 3 years. Moreover, these CSR provisions are applicable to select companies on the basis of their profit margins, on the basis of their turnovers. It's not like all companies are mandated to do that. There are proper benchmarks, and according to those benchmarks, the company has to actually give the CSR amount. Next, we have got the CSR committee also. Now, this committee is constituted in the company itself, and the work of the CSR committee is to recommend to the board of directors the corporate social responsibility policy of that particular company, and to make sure that the CSR activities are being carried on effectively. So we also have the Schedule 7 of this particular act, which actually gives the schedule, which highlights the activities which are permissible. For example, we have got activities related to the rural development, we have got education and skill development, we have got sanitation, we have got disaster relief, we have environment sustainability. So it can also focus upon gender equality, it can also focus upon women empowerment, it can also focus upon, it can also contribute to the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund. So there are different activities which are mentioned in the Schedule 7 of this particular act. Next, we have got the index of core industries. See, we have got certain industries in the country which are deemed as core, that is a core part of the economy, very essential, important part. So we actually measure the increase in the production or the output from these core industries through a particular metric, and this metric is the index of core industries. Now this index of the core industries, we get to know the growth rate of different industries along with their weightage. So we have got different weightage which is given to different industries. So if you look at this particular chart, you can see that the refinery products are given the maximum weightage of 28.04%, and then we have got fertilizers which are given the least number, that is 2.63. So you can just have a idea that which sectors are given how much amount of weightage. So on the basis of that, we actually calculate the index of the core industries. Now this is actually prepared every month, and it is released by the Office of the Economic Advisor, Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. Now this is a part of the Ministry of Commerce and Industries, do remember. So the base year is that of 2011-12. Now please understand that we have got the index of industrial production also, right? So we have got the IIP. Now in this particular IIP, we have got almost 40.27%, which is actually apart from the eight core industries, right? So the 8 core industries form around 40.2% of the index of industrial production. Next, we have got the BIRAC, which is Biotechnology Industry Research Assistant Council. Now this is a non-profit entity, and this is a public sector enterprise under the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India. Now see, please understand that the primary work of this BIRAC is to collaborate and then is to facilitate the industry academia interface, right? So it also focuses upon the access to the risk capital through targeted funding. It makes sure that if there is a particular activity, research activity which is going on in a particular field of biotechnology, it gets adequate funding. Then it also focuses upon the technology transfer, the intellectual property management, and hand-holding schemes. Next, it also focuses upon the networks and the platforms that help to bridge the existing gaps among different entities. Also, it initiated partnership with several national and global partners around the world in the domain of biotechnology. Next, under the BIRAC, we have got some of the schemes. For example, we have got the BioNest. Now, this stands for Bioincubators Nurturing Entrepreneurship for Scaling Technologies, and then we have got the Biotechnology Ignition Grant Scheme, right? So just take an idea. This can be important for the preliminary exam. Next, we have got the Russia-Ukraine mapping. Now this becomes very important. So if you just look at this map, there is Black Sea, and we have got the adjoining countries. So we have got Russia, we have got Ukraine, we have got Romania, we have got other countries as well. So now what you need to focus upon is some of the very important areas of this region. First, you have got the Crimean Peninsula, right? So do remember this. Then we also have the Sea of Azov. This is very important. So we have got the Sea of Azov here, right? And this is Black Sea. Next, what you need to focus upon is some of the very important points, and that is, for example, Mariupol becomes very important. Then you have got Zaporozhye Oblast. Now here it was the nuclear plant which suffered a meltdown. So do remember this. Then we have got some of the other provinces, for example, Luhansk. Now these Luhansk and Donetsk, they basically have got a separatist tendencies in the Ukraine, right? And that is basically being used by the Russian forces. So we have got some of the important places, for example, Kharkiv, we have got Bakhmut, we have got Odessa. So do remember these places. Then we also have got this river. If you just see, we have got Dnieper River. So it drains into the Black Sea. So just remember. So this becomes very important for your prelims. These places, for example, Luhansk, or we have got Donetsk, we have got Bakhmut, we have got Kharkiv, we have got Odessa. These places can be of importance when it comes to the preliminary exam. So that is for today. I hope you enjoyed the session. All the best.